We're talking about the Power Ballad next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, this is Ian C. Welcome to Retro Serial. I'm glad you could be joining me for this episode. Before we get into this episode, I do have a kind of a sad announcement to make. One of our guests on our program died of COVID-19 over the holiday season, just before the new year. In fact, it was Glenn Blakely, the guy I interviewed about art trends of growing up, Generation X. Unfortunately, he passed away just a few days ago, and we're very sad to see him go. He was one of the people that I actually talked to when I started this channel, and he was super encouraging, and he was elated to be on the program, and we had already even planned on doing another episode. There are actually two episodes with him in the program. There's the long interview form, and then afterwards there's a little bit of a interview with him, just kind of showing some artwork that he had collected, and that was because there was just so much artwork we were looking at. That was one of those videos that was for YouTube only. So if you're listening to this on the podcast platform and you haven't seen that episode, head on over and check both of those episodes out. Unfortunately, yeah, he passed away, and it's really sad. It's really super sad. So it's always sad when a friend passes away, and it's sad to see a supporter of the show pass away as well, especially somebody who I was close with for many, many years. So with that said, also, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share this on your favorite social media. Again, these are small steps for you, but they actually mean a lot for us here on the channel, and it goes a long way. And I personally would really appreciate it. Again, if you want to go that one extra step, you're always welcome to follow the link below to the Buy Me a Coffee, where you can donate some of your cash during this time to help us grow the program here. And I actually got some more stuff to put up on the walls and things like that. I got some cool stuff. It's just taking me a little bit to get it all put up so it looks visually appealing. But there's going to be some steps forward being taken. I got the mug made up, and well, I didn't get it made up. It was given to me for Christmas. And we'll be keeping you posted on the details of that mug, because eventually I'd like to, be able to sell it or whatever. Just things like that. Things are moving forward here for us on the channel. So it's actually super exciting for me. And the background again, so it just kind of doesn't, you see these games in the back, and the reason why there's these games in the back and kind of a little bit of nostalgia twist to it is I do run another channel called Board Game Addict, where I talk about board games. So that's kind of why we have this little bit of a background, and I want to make it a little bit more about both channels, because I put my heart and soul into both channels. It's not like I'm just kind of riding one or the other. I'm definitely interested in both things. So, all right, all that said, like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank you. Really appreciate it. It means a lot to us here. So today we are going to be talking about the Power Ballad, because I really don't know what defined the airwaves more and MTV more in the 80s and 90s to a degree, mostly the 80s, 70s too, depending on how you define what a power ballad is, than the Power Ballad. I mean, the Power Ballad was everywhere. I have a little bit of a conflicted take on the Power Ballad, I guess, or conflicted feelings about it, because in one sense, I approach it from a couple different ways. In one sense, I approach it from somebody who grew up enjoying that kind of music. And as I enjoyed that kind of music during that time, heavy metal in particular, I really, really valued the Power Ballad. It was a great part of the music industry. As a matter of fact, I remember coming home and turning on MTV in the hopes that Either Every Rose Has Its Thorn would be on the video from that, or Home Sweet Home would be on, and or even later things like I Saw Red, or Heaven from Warrant. I wasn't a big Warrant fan, but I do have to say that I did like the power ballads, and we'll talk all about that. So that's one aspect. I grew up during the time, and when they were out, it was something I was really into. However, in my young adult life, as I've said before, as you'll remember as devotees of the program, that I grew up kind of liking heavy metal, but then I went through this transition where not only did I not like heavy metal, but I despised heavy metal. I couldn't stand it. I went full bore into the Nirvana scene, into the underground scene, into the alternative rock scene. Absolutely loved it. Found a home there, much more of a home than I found when I was trying to be a heavy metal rock star type of person and enjoying that music. But so I went from liking it to hating it, and now that I'm older, I'm like, I kind of revalue it again. It's kind of one of those things that now that I've kind of pulled away from the fight that surrounds whether or not heavy metal music is good music or bad music, I can kind of appreciate it again. Because in the 90s, man, I mean, heavy metal, and particularly hair heavy metal, was a joke. I mean, it was looked at as a joke. It was laughed at as a joke. When the alternative rock scene took over, it was not just a new type of music that came out and replaced, a previous type of music as the most popular music, but it was actually antithetical to the previous type of, it was against, in a way that hadn't happened before. For example, when New Wave came out, it wasn't like New Wave was a new type of music. It was, on the air and all that stuff. But New Wavers weren't sitting around making fun of, or at least, in the public arena, making fun of bands like The Doors or the Beatles. It just didn't happen. Or even, late 70s bands like, Led Zeppelin or something like that. And when heavy metal came out as well, it's not like heavy metal came out and there was this explosion and this popularity of it. It's not like these heavy metal people were turning around and making fun of or saying how much they despised, 70s rock or acid rock or something like that came before them. There seemed to be this appreciation, even if they didn't quite sound like the previous generation, even if they were different enough to be classified as a different type of rock music. But when the grunge scene hit and when alternative rock hit, which the grunge scene was one huge component of that, it was almost like this, we hate what came before. We hate this. And I was on board with that hatred for a while. So when I talk about, this kind of brings it back around to my thoughts here on this subject, and when I talk about glam rock, when I talk about power ballads, I'm approaching it really from three places. I'm approaching it from the person who grew up loving it, turning into the person who kind of rejected it for reasons that I've talked about before in a previous podcast. And then now, as kind of an older person, now that fight's over with, being able to go back and listen to it and not hate it anymore and appreciate it for what it is. So that's my personal approach to it. So now let's talk about it. Let's talk about what is glam rock, or what is not glam rock, what is the power ballad, and why the power ballads were so popular, because they were hugely popular. Most of the time, if you turned on MTV, there was a power ballad being played. If you had the radio on, even if you're listening to some soft rock station that generally didn't play any type of heavy metal, then they would still play like Every Rose Has Its Thorn or Home Sweet Home or or I Remember You, or something like that. It was generally played on those stations. So I want to talk about what it is, the types of bands that produced it, and why they were so popular. Okay, so that's kind of how I want to break this down. What is it? Why is it so popular? And then some of the, the music, some of the actual songs I'll talk about too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what a power ballad is and how we define it. How do we define a power ballad? It almost seems to be, in one sense, intuitive that we know what a power ballad is. But just because it's intuitive, and when you turn on the radio, everybody knows what a power ballad is. And if I asked anybody kind of off the street who understands music at all to name a power ballad, we would all kind of name the same things. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't need some type of explanation. A power ballad is not just a slow song, okay? So, because there are lots of slow songs and there are lots of real melodic songs out there. But generally speaking, when you're trying to define a power ballad, it's a slow song that is performed by a band that generally doesn't play what would be considered slow or melodic type of music. So, for example, if you got a heavy metal album out, let's just say, kind of a hair metal or a heavy metal album, like Look What the Cat Dragged In from Poison. Their song that was a slow song on that, or their power ballad, which was the power ballad on that album, was Every Rose Has Its Thorn. And it was different because not every song sounded like that. As a matter of fact, that would have been the different sounding song. Power ballads are generally done by heavy metal bands, or rock bands in particular, who are traditionally more heavy or more fast. And it's not just a slow song done by a band that's more heavy or more fast. It's a slow song done by that was more heavy and more fast, that was done by a band that was more guitar based. Okay, and that's kind of the key to it too. It was more guitar based. In other words, you could have a synth pop band, and even a lot of synth pop bands had guitars in them. They weren't considered guitar or heavy bass, or a guitar or heavy type of a bass. Not bass like in the bass, like the bass drum or something, or the bass guitar. I'm talking about like their foundation. That's what I'm looking for, is their foundation. So, for example, you might have a new wave band who plays a lot of more fast songs, and then goes into rotation of a slow song. That still wouldn't, in my opinion, be considered a power ballad. The general idea is that you have a guitar, kind of heavy guitar foundation type of band that then digresses into a slower song. The other thing that kind of makes a power ballad is, yes, they focus in on different instruments and more melody, but at some point in the song, there is some hard rock overtones to it. Generally, this happens after the first verse, during kind of, maybe the bridge, or right before the guitar solo. So you might have something like really kind of acoustic, really kind of melodic, really kind of, slow, and then suddenly, at some point, there'll be some striking of a distorted guitar, or the guitar solo will come in kind of screaming, kind of screaming. A good example. Well, I mean, obviously there are tons of examples of this. You can think of Home Sweet Home. You can think of Every Rose Has Its Thorn, as I've already said. You can think of I Remember You. They all do this. All these power ballads kind of have that. They're these guitar-based bands who normally play fast and heavy music, playing a slower paced song, and some point during that song it picks up. There's this striking of the guitar, or the lead guitar kind of goes off, or between the first and second verse, or between the verse and the bridge, there's this striking of that that guitar chord that defines them as a guitar driven type of music. So I think that's kind of a little bit of a long-winded explanation, but I really kind of wanted to get that down so that we all know what we're talking about. Because somebody might think of somebody like, I don't know, Peter Cetera, and say, well, that was a good ballad. Yeah, but not every slow song, not every ballad is a power ballad. And that's particularly what I'm going for on this. It's a power ballad. So now that we kind of know what a power ballad is, why were power ballads so popular? Why did they seem to break the mold, so to speak, of or cross over? That's really the term that I'm looking for. Why do they cross over? Why is somebody who somebody who's not listening to heavy metal, but is listening to Madonna or listening to Pebbles or somebody like that, who's into like maybe top 40 hits, will also like this group of heavy metal songs that are known as power ballads? What happened? How come it was so explosive? I mean, you think about the songs that topped the charts during that time. Why were they so popular? Well, I've got a few different reasons why they were popular. First of all, they were more melodic than other heavy metal, or they were more melodic than what we're used to hearing on regular heavy metal. So let me give you an example of this. Take the difference between something like Livewire and Home Sweet Home. Okay, so Home Sweet Home is a big power ballad, popular power ballad. It actually made MTV change its rules on its call-in countdown when they were doing that. But you have the same band playing something like Livewire. Livewire is a great song, but it's fast-paced and it's not as melodic. Okay, what I mean by not as melodic is the melody isn't pronounced. Basically, what Vince Neil is doing in a song like that is he's just kind of saying the words. It's not really being sung so much as it's being chanted. Okay, so it's not as melodic. But then you get to Home Sweet Home, and it's more melodic. There's more of a melody to it that invites the listener to sing along, basically. Invites the listener to say, hey, this is great. So that's a really good comparison between this type of song where he's not singing I'm a live wire, he's just kind of chanting this, where then you get to Home Sweet Home and it's being sung more. It's more melodic, and that just appeals to a larger audience. So that's one thing, is that it's more melodic. I think the second reason why it crosses boundaries and a lot of people like it, and why it was so popular, is the lyrics are more introspective, and they are they're more introspective. They're more soulful. When you think about the difference, now here's the difference. I'll give you another example. You have Poison, and I think I said Look What the Cat Dragged In, but I don't think it was that album. I can't remember the name of the album now. I'm sorry. I should know this, but you know, you have nothing but a good time. Let me just give you the example. And he's really singing about nothing. I mean, he's just singing about partying. I mean, it's really, yeah, it's all great and stuff, but it's nothing deep. But then you get to a song on the same album, like their hit off that, like their melodic hit off that album, their power ballad hit off that album, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, and it's about a breakup. And that's something that is more introspective. He's singing more about something, that some emotional crisis that he's going through, rather than just singing about some good time that he's having. The same thing could be said for Skid Row in I Remember You. You can see that same kind of contrast going on. So you've got I Remember You, but on that same album, you have something like Youth Gone Wild. Okay, Youth Gone Wild is one of those party songs. It's a rebellion song. It's a, we're the youth gone wild, and, you know, we're tearing it up and all this stuff. Not very introspective as far as a song is concerned. I'm not saying it's a bad song. I'm not saying introspective good, party song bad. I'm just saying what appeals to a larger audience is something that they can identify with. And then when somebody goes from, hey, we're tearing it up because we're the youth, to this breakup song, people identify with that. You just have more, it's more introspective, and people like that more. And why do people like that more? Well, it's more universal. Okay. These songs are, and this kind of leads into the next one. It's tightly tied to the first one, but it leads into the next one. It's more universal. We can look at all three of those bands and all three of those songs that I already mentioned, and you can see how the power ballad is more universal in its message than their fast beat song. Not everybody's going to identify with the party song. As a matter of fact, only, you know, other heavy metal people are identifying with that and the way it sounds. And what you have is, you have this song about a breakup, and it's way more universal. People identify with that because people have gone through breakups, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've gone through this breakup. I want to put on a breakup song. And with a lot of other breakup songs, it's popular. And so it crosses boundaries. The fourth reason why I think that power ballads were so popular is they're different. Okay, so they're different, and by different, I mean it doesn't sound like what's on the rest of the album, but it's different in that the music, the instrumentality has a different focus to it. Okay, so let me give you an example. So let's talk about Warrant, and let's talk about a song, Cherry Pie, and then let's talk about, in contrast to that, Heaven. Okay, and this could be said of a lot of different, I'll go through a few different bands and a few different songs so you can get the idea. So Cherry Pie is electric guitar, where Heaven is acoustic guitar. You listen to the whole album, and it's electric guitar, electric guitar, electric guitar, and then here all of a sudden you get to acoustic guitar. Okay, the same could be said again of Every Rose Has Its Thorn. You know, you have the electric guitar, electric guitar, electric guitar, then you have the acoustic guitar. And that just, I mean, anything that's different kind of makes you sit up and change. It makes you sit up and take notice because of the change. It's different. You're just wired that way to notice things that are different. The same with Home Sweet Home. Home Sweet Home is, Motley Crue is a power guitar based band, and it's like power guitar, power guitar, power guitar, and then something totally different, piano. not just synthesizer either, piano. So it's piano, it's different, and it's melodic, and the words are introspective, and it's something that everybody kind of goes through, and so suddenly you have a hit. And this is why power ballads are so prevalent. Okay, so who makes power ballads? I've talked about this a little bit, but I just kind of want to close up with this. Power ballads are generally done by rock bands. They are not exclusively done by heavy metal bands. However, heavy metal bands did kind of latch onto the genre and make the genre, I believe, really make the genre what it is. But that doesn't mean that they came up with it de novum. They didn't come up with it out of nowhere. De novum. I don't even know if that's the right word. They didn't come up with it ex nihilo. Okay, out of nowhere, out of nothing. They didn't come up with it ex nihilo. They came up with it because bands before that were heavy bands did ballads. The reason why I think that the heavy metal ballads stuck out as power ballads amongst other bands. So let me give you an example of this. So Foreigner is a rock band playing rock music, and then they come along with I forgot the name of the song. I'm sorry. They come along with a slow song. Okay, it's a great. Their songs are great. They're a nice upbeat, heavy instrument, heavy heavy sound, rock sound. However, the contrast is not as dramatic. Okay, the contrast is not as dramatic, and I believe that this is why it went from general rock, and rock still does this, to heavy metal, to particularly hair metal. Now, it's not that heavy metal doesn't do this as well. So when you talk about hair metal or glam metal, I know those are kind of derogative terms. I'm sorry. This is just what, when I say hair metal, when I say hair band, when I say glam band, everybody knows what I'm talking about. When I say heavy metal, it's a much broader aspect. So heavy metal band, for example, Metallica, plays heavy songs, but they're not by any means a glam band. But then they sing a song like Nothing Else Matters. It's a popular song. However, even that doesn't have as big of a contrast as the contrast is between Smoking in the Boys' Room and Home Sweet Home, or Nothing But a Good Time and Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm trying to answer the question why glam metal ballads soared. I mean, just soared to the top over against other ones that were still considered ballads and still considered power ballads. This is why. I'll tell you why. Because the rest of Metallica's music is very melodic and is also introspective, and is also kind of has deeper meanings in a lot of their music. And so to go from something like, I don't know, something like, One or Kill 'Em All or whatever, to Nothing Else Matters isn't as large of a jump as it is with this long-haired, bleach blonde party boy talking about how many drugs he's scored and how many girls he's scored with to going to this melodic sounding song. It jumps more. It's more different than the difference between a heavy song by Metallica and a lighter song by Metallica. There are more differences. There is more contrast. And again, this is not a judgment on any of those bands or songs or whatever. I'm just trying to answer the question why power ballads were so popular and what defines the genre of a power ballad and all that stuff. I'm repeating myself now. So I really think that power ballads soared at the top for those reasons. And you see, got this I don't know, this bad boy. There's a kind of a bad boy image with heavy metal bands, and so then you see this bad boy who's all into drugs and breaking hearts, suddenly singing this sappy song about his breakup or missing home or something like that. So that's it. I mean, I really don't have too much other to say other than, I can share with you some of my favorite power ballads of the time. So let's just end with that. I'll talk about some of my absolute favorite power ballads. Three of them kind of stand out more, and then there are some of them that I didn't really like at all. Okay. So probably my top three power ballads would have been Skid Row. I Remember You was one of my favorites. I loved Skid Row at the time. I loved Skid Row when they came out, and I loved their ballads. And I was a big fan for probably their first two albums. And after that, the whole Nirvana scene kind of took over, and I was well on board with that. Another power ballad that I really enjoyed was Every Rose Has Its Thorn. Okay, I really enjoyed that one a lot. As a matter of fact, during that time, I really didn't like Poison at all. And their second album, or their first album, was Look What the Cat Dragged In, and then their second album was, I forgot. The name just went right out of my head. It's going to upset me. I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to immediately remember the name. But that second album kind of made me like the band a little bit more, and especially Every Rose Has Its Thorn. I mean, who couldn't like that song? I mean, who couldn't like that song? So it made me kind of respect the band a little bit more. I didn't like the band when it came out. I really didn't like the band at all. But I did like it eventually later. And I'm not saying I didn't like the band because I got into alternative rock and then I look back on it. No, even during that time when I was into heavy metal, Poison was not one of my favorites. Okay, it just really, really wasn't. As far as hair metal is concerned, really my top go-tos were Motley Crue, Rat, and Dokken were probably my favorite bands that even could be considered glam bands. All the other glam bands I didn't like. I was more into band. I was really into Motley Crue, but they were one of my all-time favorite bands during that time, if not my favorite band during that time. I really liked Rat. I really liked Dokken. But I was also into things like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. I mean, those were two of my all-time favorite bands back then too. All right, but that said, Every Rose Has Its Thorn came out. I thought, okay, this is a decent band, and I gave their second album a little bit more listen to. By the time their third album came out, wasn't into it. Again, that's when the Nirvana scene took over. Okay. And then probably my number one all-time favorite ballad would be Home Sweet Home. Who did not love that song? I still think that song is a phenomenal song. I will still find myself listening to it. Not infrequently, might I add, not infrequently. Okay. So what were some of your favorite power? I wish I had a top 5 list or whatever. I know that there were other power ballads out there. There were some power ballads I just didn't like. I didn't care for it. Everybody was doing a power ballad at that point. I liked the power ballads that came out, and then I didn't like, November Rain. That was really good. November, I got to be honest with you, as far as a band that stuck with me, even when I went from, liking heavy metal to liking alternative rock, one band that just transcended that was Guns N' Roses. Particularly Appetite for Destruction and Use Your Illusion and Lies. I mean, those three, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, Lies, I loved them. I still do. They're still great albums. And November Rain, what an excellent song. What an excellent song. That would be on my top 5 list for sure. Still think of it number 5, can't think of any, but number 1 would definitely be Home Sweet Home. I mean, that would just have to be number 1. All right, so what do you think? Do you think I'm right about what a power ballad is? Do you think I'm right about what makes a power ballad a power ballad? I don't know. I just kind of rambled on here today for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you thought what I said was at least insightful, even if you disagreed with me. What were some of your favorite power ballads? Before we go, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share it on your favorite social media. Follow the link, all that stuff. Trying to grow a huge YouTube empire here, and it starts with you by helping me by subscribing to our channel, and then which is a bit of a bummer, because like, even let's say for example, one of my videos goes viral. At this point, YouTube doesn't monetize until you have 1,000 subscribers. So please help me to get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. It would really mean a lot to me. That's it for the program. Thanks again for watching, and we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Retro Serial. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. If you're listening to this on podcast, please give me an honest review and rating. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you didn't know, we have a YouTube channel. And if you like what we're doing here on the podcast, you're going to love what we're doing over on YouTube. So head on over there. And if you're already on YouTube and you like this video, well, you'll like these videos too.